This man appeared unexpectedly. He was neither a politician nor a businessman, but his words made Trump reflect on things he had always ignored. It was one of those rare nights when Trump was alone in his office at Mar-a-Lago. Outside, the night was silent and moonless, with a gentle breeze swaying the palm trees beyond the large panoramic windows. The air carried the salty scent of the ocean, mingling with the aroma of Cuban cigars often enjoyed by his guests. He cherished these quiet moments when he could be alone with his thoughts, sifting through the most crucial decisions and memories of his career. He sat in his favorite leather chair, dressed in a dark blue blazer with a lightly unbuttoned white collar, mirroring his relaxed yet focused demeanor. Scattered documents lay across his desk, but his thoughts were far away. He felt a sense of exhaustion, yet also unease. The day had been long, filled with tense negotiations, and now he needed this moment of solitude. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the desk, echoing the cadence of his wandering thoughts. When his secretary informed him that a man was at the entrance insisting on a meeting, Trump's first instinct was to refuse. He was tired of unexpected visitors with requests, of old acquaintances who only remembered him when they needed something. The idea of listening to yet another story from the past seemed like a waste of time, but there was something in the secretary's voice, a barely perceptible hesitation, that made him reconsider. There was something unusual about this man, something that made Trump pause and rethink his decision. He didn't know why, but his intuition whispered that this meeting would be different. "Who is he?" Trump asked, setting his documents aside with a mix of irritation and mild curiosity. He disliked unexpected meetings, especially late at night when his mind was preoccupied with plans of his own. Yet there was something about this situation that put him on alert. His hand froze over the papers for a moment, his eyes narrowed, and a tense silence hung in the air. "His name is Jonathan Baker. He says he has a personal matter to discuss with you." He spoke with a kind of urgency, as if this were a matter of life and death. It seemed he didn't come for personal gain, but rather to share something of immense importance. Trump sighed, ran a tired hand over his face, and nodded. "Fine, send him in." When the doors opened, a middle-aged man appeared, dressed in a simple yet well-kept suit. His face bore signs of fatigue and hardship, wrinkles telling the story of a difficult life. His eyes were red, as if he had spent a sleepless night contemplating something important. His lips trembled slightly, and his hands clenched tightly into fists, as if he was about to say something that mattered more to him than money or status. His gaze carried not only determination, but also an inner struggle, between the fear of being dismissed and the hope of being heard. "Mr. Trump," he began, his fists still clenched, "you don't remember me, but many years ago, I witnessed a moment that changed my life." Trump leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest, feeling an internal battle between skepticism and curiosity. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his fingers absent-mindedly tapped against the fabric of his sleeve. The memory stirred within him but remained blurred, like old black and white footage on a worn-out screen. He wasn't used to emotional conversations, let alone ones where he was the central figure. A strange mix of pride and doubt settled in. Was he truly the man Baker described? When he finally spoke, his voice was low and measured. "All right, Mr. Baker, I'm listening." The man took a deep breath as if preparing for something momentous. His shoulders tensed and his fingers twitched nervously, as though he was gathering all his strength before speaking. A flicker of hesitation crossed his eyes, as if he was still unsure whether he should tell this story. His heart pounded. He had no idea how Trump would react. He felt a wave of emotions rising in his throat, but he forced himself to remain composed. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but filled with inner conviction. "This happened many years ago when I worked on the construction of Trump Tower," he said, swallowing hard as if afraid his words wouldn't carry weight. "At that time, my life was falling apart. I was losing my family, my money, almost everything," he added, his voice trembling slightly with the echoes of those painful years. "That day I saw you purely by chance," he continued, staring at the floor, as if trying to summon the memory back to life. "You stopped by one of the workers who was staying late," he said, his eyes lighting up now, his voice gaining confidence. "I remember every word you said." "And what did I say?" Trump asked skeptically. "You asked his name and why he was still working so late." His face was exhausted, his hands covered in dust and calluses, but in his eyes was sheer determination. He said he was trying to earn a little more to support his family, that every extra dollar was a chance to give his children a better education, a chance not to lose their home. His voice was quiet but filled with hope, and for a moment, when he finished speaking, it felt as if the world had stopped. Jonathan Baker nervously clenched his fingers and continued, "And then you reached into your pocket and pulled out a check." Silence filled the air, broken only by the distant hum of the city. You handed the check to him without hesitation and said, "Your family is more important than any building." His eyes welled up with tears. He didn't know how to respond. His lips trembled, his hands clenched as if afraid that this moment was just a dream. He couldn't believe it was real. Baker fell silent, as if reliving that moment. His hands trembled slightly, and his eyes shimmered with emotion. "That worker was my best friend. Because of your kindness, he got out of debt, saved his marriage. But the story didn't end there. Inspired by your example, he decided to help others who were struggling, just like he had. He began working with charities, started a small fund to support families of construction workers who had lost their homes or jobs. Over time, he opened a workshop where he trained young men who had grown up without fathers in the trade of construction. I was given a chance once, and now I have to pass it on," he would say. He never forgot that moment when you helped him, and that simple gesture inspired him to change hundreds of lives. And you know what? He helped me when I was on the edge. When I lost my job and ended up on the street, he was the one who reached out to me. I became part of his team, and together, we were able to do so much good. That one act of yours, it started a chain reaction of kindness that hasn't stopped since." Trump listened carefully, no longer with skepticism, but with genuine interest. He tried to recall that moment, but his memory failed him. There had been so many similar days, so many decisions he had made without a second thought. His gaze became distant as fragments of past events swirled together in his mind. He disliked the feeling that something important might have slipped away from his memory. Leaning forward, he intertwined his fingers and studied the man's face, searching for any detail that could bring the memory back. Had he truly done what this man was claiming? And if so, how many more similar stories existed that he was completely unaware of? "You know," Trump finally spoke after a pause, "I never thought moments like these could have such an impact." "Impact?" Baker smiled faintly. "It saved two families. But I realized that wasn't enough. I wanted to do more. I started working on community initiatives, helping the homeless find jobs, and launched a small program to teach young men construction skills. I saw how people who had lost faith in themselves found a new sense of purpose. Every time I saw someone's grateful smile, I thought of you, Mr. Trump." Over time, I expanded my work, creating a support center for families who had found themselves in difficult circumstances. We provide housing for those who lost their homes, help them find employment, and assist them in rebuilding their lives. It all started with one act, one you probably don't even remember, but that act became an inspiration that I now pass on to others. A silence settled in the room. Trump gazed at Baker, his own thoughts swirling chaotically. He felt a strange warmth inside, not the kind that accompanied victories or business deals, but something deeper, more personal. His expression grew distant, as if he had traveled back to those distant days when he made decisions without considering their impact on others. He recalled other moments, other people he had encountered, decisions that had seemed insignificant at the time, but perhaps had far-reaching consequences. Were there more stories like Baker's? How many times had he unknowingly changed someone's life with a simple gesture? These thoughts refused to leave him. For the first time in a long while, he felt something resembling doubt. Had he paid enough attention to those who worked alongside him? He stood up and walked toward the window, gazing at the vast ocean stretching out into the night. For the first time in years, he felt something different. Not pride, not confidence, but a true warmth from the realization that even the smallest gesture could change someone's life. "Well, Mr. Baker," he said, turning back and looking the man in the eye, "you made me remember things I haven't thought about in a long time. We often rush forward without noticing what we leave behind. But your story proves that every gesture matters. I don't know how many more moments like this have happened in my life, but now I understand. Sometimes real impact isn't in decisions that change the world, but in the small actions that change individual lives. Trump sighed and paused as if carefully choosing his words. His gaze softened, his voice lost its usual sharpness, carrying an unexpected sincerity. I've always believed that success is something measurable. Numbers, buildings, money, votes. But now I think true success is the legacy you leave in the lives of others. Not grand words or massive projects, but moments like this. Ones you don't even realize are happening, yet they change people. He shook his head slightly and smiled, more to himself than to his guest. It's strange how one seemingly insignificant decision can trigger a chain of events that affect dozens of people. And you know what? I'm glad I learned about it today. Baker nodded and extended his hand. Trump shook it, and at that moment, they both felt that this encounter had changed them both. The man hesitated for a second, as if wanting to hold on to the moment for just a little longer. He then slowly stepped back, feeling a wave of emotions crash over him. His hands trembled slightly, but he smiled with quiet restraint. "Thank you, Mr. Trump," Baker said softly. "I didn't know what to expect from this meeting, but now I know for sure. Sometimes it's worth saying thank you, even if it's years too late." Trump nodded, his expression serious and thoughtful. "The world is small, Mr. Baker. Maybe one day we'll meet again." Turning away, Baker slowly walked toward the door, leaving behind a lingering sense of unfinished thoughts, as if words had been left unspoken in the air. Trump watched him go, and as the door closed, he remained standing still for a few minutes, listening to the echo of this unexpected meeting in his mind. This encounter left a deep mark on Trump's consciousness. He began recalling other similar incidents, people he had helped or those he had unknowingly impacted. Scenes from the past played out in his mind, decisions that had seemed insignificant but may have changed someone's life forever. His thoughts drifted between pride and an unexpected sense of responsibility. He realized that power and success weren't just about influence in business, but about humanity. The idea that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple through time. He felt a strange warmth spread through him as he grasped the truth. Real value isn't in material wealth, but in how you can change the world for even one person. Small actions can change lives, even when we don't realize it. Sometimes a single act of kindness can create a domino effect, altering the destinies of many. True impact isn't measured in money or status, but in how we help those in need. Every day presents an opportunity to leave behind not just a legacy of success, but one of goodness that will echo for years to come.